Morning. Happy F3 Friday. Welcome to Faith Family Focus Season 2. I am Faith Suggs, one of your co-hosts, former Duke Women's Basketball graduate and CEO and founder of my social media and branding company, Brand by Faith. This wonderful man next to me is my father, Schaefer Suggs, former NFL player with the New York Jets and the Cincinnati Bengals. Has also served as VP and on the executive board with the RPFPC. Welcome back, F3 Family. Dad, good morning.
Happy Friday. Happy Friday. It is Friday. What a quick week.
Well, yeah, it was a 4-day week, we should call it. Yeah. Labor Day earlier this week, great show on Monday, great show on Wednesday. Yeah. What's new? How's the weather going into the weekend? Are we fall yet?
Nice fall weekend. Nice sunny. Hopefully it'll stay this way all weekend. This is the best time of the year. Football starting. It's really excited.
Well, give us the rundown last night. NFL start.
Yeah, great game. Tampa Bay and Dallas was probably one of the best opening NFL football games in a long time. Dak Prescott played phenomenal. It went down to the last play. Of course, they gave the ball to Brady with a minute and 38 seconds left, and he marched him down. And he's phenomenal. 44 years old. Being able to play the way he plays. And I was happy for two reasons. I was happy to see him as good as he's ever been. And then I was also happy to see Dak Prescott, the way he played. He's a phenomenal quarterback. And the Dallas Cowboys has something really special. And hopefully he will stay healthy. But it was a great game to watch. And I don't normally watch all the game, but I found myself just mesmerized by Tom Brady. And then it's Antonio Brown. I mean, he's a comeback story. For someone who has had a really rough patch on the verge of being completely kicked out of the league and actually incarcerated, and be able to come back. I'm always really happy to see that, and I attribute a lot of that to Brady. Tom Brady embracing him, mentoring him, taking him in, just really happy to see. So there's a lot of good stories, a lot of backdrop stories. That game, of course, it was the game that they unveiled the Super Bowl trophy. It was just a lot of good stuff last night. A lot of fans.
I heard it. Well, of course, it was in Tampa Bay, right? I heard that it came down to a call, though. Now, some are saying there was pass interference involved. Some are not saying that. Of course, Cowboys fans were outraged.
It was an offensive pass interference that wasn't called, but those things happen. Right. It was an offensive. It was back over the shoulder pass, and a lot of times, if you know anything about playing defensive back, you're facing the receiver. And the whole idea is to throw the ball before it gets there, and the receiver has the advantage. And right at the last minute, he pushed off a little bit, create separation. They caught the pass to give them the first down, and then of course that allowed them to be in position to kick a field goal.
Now that probably, your rules are way different than the rules now, huh? From how you guys used to be able to cover.
Well, we were able to be a lot more aggressive. But it wasn't called. So normally the receiver.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. We're freezing a little bit on Schaefer's end. He had a little technical difficulties from his Wi-Fi this morning when he gets moving. But we were talking about NFL football. Debuted last night. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers, led by Tom Brady and Dak Prescott. How about them Cowboys? Great game last night. Great start to the NFL season. We lost the Cowboys, though. However, went down to a last-minute play. Great game, of course. Best way to kick off the NFL season. How is everyone doing? Happy F3 Friday. We have some great stuff in store for you guys today. Some great guests. And we're really excited to dive into today's show. A few things I want to dive into, though. we never got to loop around on this. Max Kellerman has officially left First Take after I don't know how long with Stephen A. Smith. As much as I enjoyed Max, I'm going to miss him. They're trying out some new people. I don't know if they gave Michael Irvin the official spot yet. I know Tim Tebow was thrown up in there as names. And they really love Tim Tebow over at ESPN. So whoever is going to get that spot, it's a big spot right now on primetime sports television on ESPN. And who wants to battle Stephen A. Smith and argue across from him every morning? We'll see with Molly. College football is creeping in. I know NFL kicked off last night. College football has been creeping in, starting up, I think, 2 weeks ago. We're really full go now. Duke already played. They lost to Charlotte. I was disappointed, but I did watch the game. A couple more people. Devin, my brother, over at Yale. He has a couple scrimmages, and he's playing. And I don't know, when's their first game, Dev?
First game is next weekend. First game is against Holy Cross.
Holy Cross.
He did say they had a scrimmage. He got a chance to get in and get some plays in, and he said they were not very good, but I did hear from him. And then, of course, I will be at his first game at Holy Cross. It's actually his first 2 games. Hopefully, the second game against Cornell, I can reconnect with our good friend Ed Marinero because his son plays for Cornell.
Nice.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, very
exciting stuff, though. Exciting.
Yeah. No, it's exciting. I'm excited. College basketball, of course, I'm more excited about because we're all over college basketball over here. We are excited for games. We're excited for first day of practice. That starts end of September, but all basketball players right now are working through NIL stuff right now from what I'm working on. And they're all getting ready to set up. I've seen a lot of football players, college football players dive into some really great deals with a lot of great brands, from cryptocurrency to Bitcoin to this to that. It's pretty interesting to see all the guys and the girls kind of dive into the new stuff with NFT. We'll dive into that a little bit maybe next week or next Friday. But we are excited for this sports season. It seems like even though we've had a year of sports, this is the first official season of sports, full go, fans in the stadium. Kids can now be vaccinated, so there's a less stress on everything. No, I'm excited, Dad. I don't know about you. I don't know if you're more excited for football or basketball, but I think we know where you're standing.
Well, both of them. I raised my hand because the NIL, so people that don't understand, the NIL stands for name, image, likeness. And I know that we've talked a little bit about that, but you mentioned that. I just wanted to make sure that our viewers understand what that is. We've had a couple of shows about it. It's huge.
Yeah.
I just want to get to that.
Right. Yeah, no. When we'll talk about it. And so basically, name, image, likeness, college athletes can now profit off of their name, image, and likeness. So the pictures of them in jerseys, they can work with brands, they can work with restaurants, they can work with whoever they want to work with. Now, I just saw a 22-year-old football player partner with a beer company. So very interesting stuff going on. We didn't know it was legal, but it's legal. That we're navigating just like everybody else is to this new stuff. But thank you for joining us, everybody. This a wonderful Friday morning. We have a wonderful guest, and we will talk about it. Well, actually, I want to dive into one quick thing while I have you guys all here. Next week is the debut of my show, The Huddle, the spinoff of Faith Family Focus. Here's a quick clip to give you guys a rundown, and then I will unveil my new guest that'll join me on Wednesday that nobody knows about. Okay, we're excited, and I will unveil my new guest. So The Huddle is dominated by me. It is my show at the spinoff from Faith Family Focus. It'll be every Wednesday, 9:04 a.m. Central, 10:04 Eastern. And we're going to have some awesome guests that join us. And this is my guest. I want to give you a rundown. Ashley Nicole Moss is the first Black woman to host a Sports Illustrated show. As of recently, she has her own show, Laces Out. She's a New York native from Brooklyn. She has been on, she's a big Knicks fan, she's a big Cowboys fan. She is a big time commentator up there with Maria Taylor, and all the young Black rising stars in the area of sports commentating and talk shows. And I'm excited to have Ashley join us on Wednesday to talk about her story And you guys can hear a little bit about her New York accent, which I'm sure we haven't really had a real New York accent join us on the show, but Ashley really does have one because she's from Brooklyn. But we are very excited to have her on Wednesday. I'm excited to kind of dive in.
Wow, what a great show.
Yes, the first episode of the Huddle. I'm very excited for it and to see where it goes. And I'm excited to have all of us on to see it and introduce it to the world.
I'll be watching it.
Of course you will, because you're not going to be on it anymore. You're not part of my Wednesday show.
Oh, that's great. She is wonderful.
Wonderful.
You guys make a good team.
Yeah, no, Ashley's great, and I'm excited for everyone to meet her. She's a really wonderful story, and she is a pretty awesome. People like her right now. Sports Illustrated just promoted her. Laces Out is a new show. They go around visiting NFL players, NBA players, WNBA players, checking out their closets, checking out the shoes they have wearing right now, and kind of getting to know them a little bit behind the scenes stuff. So if you haven't seen it, check out Laces Out before we are live on Wednesday with Ashley Nicole Moss. But Dad, we do have an awesome show today. Can you give us a little rundown about who's visiting us?
Well, we have a Payal Patel has been on our show. She has been a wonderful part of our family, our NFL family, has supported our RPFPC. Is doing some fabulous work. And the last time she was on the show, she introduced her new podcast called The Quote. And since that, she has launched it. And we wanted to bring her on, promote it, maybe listen to her first episode, maybe some segments of her episode, and just listen to this fascinating young lady share her perspective, her insight. And I just want to sit back, and I just love to watch the both of you interact and really talk about the topics that we'll be discussing.
Yeah, so once again, the quote was launched August 26th. For those of you guys who don't know, that's Women's Equality Day. So a perfect date for when that was released. And we'll give you guys a quick clip about what the quote was all about and what it looks like right before we bring her on. Let's see, and get my screen going. There it goes.
Welcome to the Quo, a community of challengers, disruptors, and changemakers. I'm your host, Payal Patel. Join me as I dive into stories at the intersection of gender, race, and social and economic issues. This podcast series spotlights individuals from various industries, disciplines, and walks of life who are challenging the status quo. Through interesting and thought-provoking conversations, The Quote aims to elevate the voices and stories of endeavoring change agents in hopes of empowering communities and inspiring meaningful change within our society through education, advocacy, and the power of storytelling. Are you ready? Let's get it.
Wonderful.
Exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting, and I really like that intro. So without further ado, welcome Payal Patel.
Hi. Good morning.
Great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thanks so much. And thank you for having me back on again.
Yeah, you're welcome. How does it feel to be officially up and running now?
I feel like there's a huge burden that's been lifted off my chest. This has been sitting on my heart and mind for such a long time, right? So to bring it to fruition is really cool to see. But then there's a whole nother level of anxiety that's followed because I'm like, now I got to put out quality product, right? Like I got to get some good stories out there. That's the whole idea of it. As you heard, I'm trying to do some storytelling around really influential people who have really done some incredible things, like challenging the status quo in whatever discipline that they've chosen, and I really want to make sure that I'm doing those stories justice. So
yeah. Well, so far the intro looks amazing, and I know that you did talk about, I have a topic you talked about, your aha moment that stemmed from, that you talked a little bit. Give us a little inside scoop on that so people have an idea of what that first episode kind of dove into.
Yeah, so my first episode, I talk about this aha moment that I had when I had heard about a story that went viral about 2 magazine covers, and this dad who was, I guess, in a bookstore with his kids, noticed it and captured this photo side by side to give a stark contrast about the messages that are shared with young girls and messages that are shared with young boys. And then those messages are then a part of our stories. We go on to embody them, and it shows up for us in many different ways. But these magazine covers, so it was Girls Life and Boys Life. The Girls Life magazine had this girl with blonde hair, with perfect hair and perfect makeup, and the text framing around her is all about getting a boyfriend and the fashion choices that you make and your first kiss. And then you look at the Boys Life magazine, there's no picture of a boy on there. It's just images of different career options, like a firefighter hat, telescope, a science tube, and all of this. And it's like, well, it's no wonder that many of us go on to feel, us as women go on to feel insecure about our looks. It's what's been reinforced in the media
Right.
constantly about this is the ideal look. This is what your target is. This is what your goals are. Landing a boyfriend is more important than figuring out your career, right? And then the boys are told that there's no limit to what they can do. And
Mhm.
so when I saw that story, I'm like, you know what? This is so true. I think growing up, all the media that I had consumed has manifested in the person I am today and the securities I have in as an adult.
Right.
And so I was like, I want to be a part of creating some sort of a media platform that is more representative of the diverse demographic of the US. And then on top of that, I want to make sure that the messaging that is out there is about more than beauty and landing a boyfriend and all of that. It's about creating meaningful change together. And so
Right.
that's kind of how the Quo came about. And I'm excited to keep it going.
Yeah. No, I mean, I love that. And I love that that was the initial topic because, I mean, we don't talk about that enough, about the visibility and what is put in front of kids from a young age, whether it's the colors that their nurseries are, to the toys that they play with, to the toys that are presented to them at gym class, right? Or the options in sports for them to play. Um,
Yeah.
all is very much gender specific, and it all leads some genders in a certain direction that, I mean, they're bound to head to, then be confused when they want to play football or when they want to go become a construction worker, or all the things that come across the board that we see as men's jobs, women's jobs, and they're very much influenced by what starts from the very beginning. So I am glad
Right.
that you dive into that. So, but tell us a little bit, how is the Quo going? Has it fulfilled your happiness right now? Is it exactly where you want it to be?
I will say it has been filling my cup. After I did my first two interviews, I was like, oh, that feels so good. I mean, I'm rusty for sure as an interviewer. I'm sure that I'm probably going to have to build up to that skill set again. I started off as a journalist, right? So it's not like it's a complete new experience, but it's definitely been a while since I've been on the other side of the microphone. As you all showed in the last episode I was on with you, I'm a spokesperson at Navy Pier, and so I do a lot of the
Right.
interviewee side of things, and so it's been a while, but yeah, it's felt good. My first guest was Bushra Amiwala, who was the youngest Muslim elected official in the entire U.S. She has such a cool story, and that's episode 2. And so in that, she talks about intersectionality because, of course, as she's running for this campaign here in Chicago for Cook County, which is like a really huge county in the state of Illinois, I mean, she's facing everything from um, gender related biases, and she's facing religion, religious identity. She's a religious minority in the US. So there's so many intersections for her. Plus she's really young. She ran for office. It's wild. First at 19 and then again at 21.
Wow.
I was like, at 19, I ran for student council president, and I was like,
Right.
that's I felt like hot shit then. I
Yeah.
was like, this woman, she's running for an actual public office in one of the biggest cities and counties in the US. So for her to have done that, I just wanted to dig into like what sparked that kind of courage for her to do something like that, and to especially do it when she knew that the odds were stacked against her, and that there had never been someone like her represented in public office out here and across the entire country. So we
Right.
talk about that, and we talk about being unapologetic about who you are, because she's really good at that. And we talked about imposter syndrome, and how women often feel that more than anybody. And so we dig into a lot of great stuff. And I think that was some really good content. And I'm looking forward to bringing on more guests like that.
Yeah. And I think that challenging the status quo, one of the big things is talking about imposter syndrome. And that kind of goes back to one of those things that we inherit through how society places things in front of us. Give us a little bit rundown about, well, for some people, they don't know what it is, imposter syndrome, and then how it is that women kind of become more accustomed to it than men.
Yeah, it's imposter syndrome is tricky. You kind of feel like you're a fraud when you try to do something that is out of the norm, but it's it could still be something that you really want to do, and you're trying to occupy a space, but you feel like you don't belong because that's how society has for so long deemed deemed it that way, right? So you're in this space and you're like, I don't feel like I belong here, or I feel like a fraud trying to be this or be that. And I still face it right now. I even in launching the quo, I'm like, well, who am I to launch something like this, and who's going to care about it? Like, why me, and why should I do this? And Bush counters that with saying, well, why not me? Why shouldn't I take up this space? Why shouldn't I be the one that is leading this major type of change? And so, but to your point, I think we often as women do get in our heads about like, I don't know if I should do this because I don't think I belong there, or I kind of just feel like I'm not worthy
Right.
of this position.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that people forget that it's very common, and it can happen to any women. I'm sure the top and the bottom. I think one thing that we learn is that, and something I had to pick up early is only two things can happen, right? Either you fail or you just don't do it, right? But you have to at least try. And so, and then maybe you knock it out the park. But I think that's the biggest thing is that we put so much emphasis on what happens when it doesn't go well instead of what happens and what if it does go well. And
I
I think,
know. I've been doing that with the quo. I'm like, what if it doesn't go well? What if nobody listens? Like the first episode, sure, all my friends tuned in, but then after that, it's like, what if
right,
nobody ever cares?
right. Yeah, that happened with us here at Faith Family Focus, of course. And then, of course, the huddle is very interesting. It's going to be on Wednesdays, and not everybody really is online on Wednesdays, right in the middle of the week. So I have to find ways to not only just do it, but also find ways to just push it in people's face and be like, here, now you have to tell me if you like it or you don't like it. But it just putting it out there is enough for me to just like relax a little bit. But it's also, you have that feeling where it's like, is it perfect enough? Is it silly? Do people love it? Do they not love it? And so I think that's something we just inherit that men don't pick up, right? I mean, Dad, tell us if we're wrong. Do you guys ever have that moment of self-doubt in this sort of way?
Wow. So you're saying a lot with when you talk about the status, and I was just as you both were speaking, I was trying to relate of feeling that way, of being maybe the only uh, African American person in a boardroom,
Yeah.
and not
Yeah, he froze a little.
and being looked at and being spoken to in questions, and I just had to go look back to that because I know we're talking about women, and because there's definitely inequities there, but
Yeah.
I can relate to that, and even in sports I can relate to that. And I think this movement, and I think this is a wonderful show because you're giving encouragement, and there's so many. What a role model, both of you, a role model to be out there in front of this, because the more and more uh, young ladies like yourself have the courage to push forward with talking about this topic, you're going to inspire other young women to do so too. So to your question, yes, I do. I can relate to it, Faith.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a big.
Hopefully that the imposter syndrome isn't exclusive to just women, but yeah, I know that
Yeah.
it's really common among women, but I would imagine that it probably does apply to men too, and it just depends on the circumstances and the context in which you exist, right?
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
Or even when you walk in a room and immediately know you have to either dummy down something or speak louder in some sort of way to make sure that you are respected or not feared. At the end of the day, that is something that it's a triggering effect that happens to a lot of people when you talk about just minorities in general, because people just sometimes have never come across maybe a strong woman in a place of leadership or a Black man who's now in charge of this project, right? There's a lot of things that throw people off who have never been exposed to things early on in life. So give us a little rundown though, so if people are watching, they can do a little research while they're watching. How do they watch the quote, and where can they, research it a little bit?
So you can learn about the Quo at our social channels, which is at the Quo Media. And you can find the episodes on YouTube. The Quo has a channel on YouTube, as well as Spotify, Anchor, Apple Podcasts, basically anywhere where you listen to and watch podcasts. We exist. And so I'm just at this point working on improving, and I want to hear from people. I really do. So if anyone listens and has feedback, please send a message in our DMs and let me know what do you want to hear more about? What are some topics that would be interesting to you? And as I seek out guests, I'll keep that in mind. And I once again, the whole point of this is to inspire audiences and to compel them to take meaningful action that's going to be a part of collective change, because it's going to require all of us. And I say that in the first episode. It's not like this, while I'm amplifying specifically voices of women and women of color more so than any other demographic, but I plan on having men on the show as well, and they need to be part of the dialogue and the conversation. Otherwise, change is never going to happen. It doesn't happen without allies.
Right.
It doesn't happen without the groups that need to be a part of, if you're in a position of power and privilege, then you have an opportunity to help uplift those who are not. And so I think those people do need to be a part of the Quo and be a part of that conversation.
How do you see platforms like the Quo leading the change that needs to happen? We've had a big year. 2020 was a big year of unveiling a lot of truth throughout this country. In 2021, as well, it unveiled a lot of truth about our Constitution, the choices we make as American people, and the freedom we have to make our own choices. How do you see the Quo pushing or challenging, like we said, the status quo, but pushing the movement to help that change get rolling?
Yeah, so I call the Quo a community of challengers, disruptors, and change makers. And so that's intentional because I'm trying to identify people who are already doing it, and then hoping that what they say and the actions that people can look at and we can point to is going to inspire people to be just as disruptive, just as vocal. Because it's one thing to witness all this that's going on, right? I mean, over the past couple of years, we've seen a lot unfold. And people have made comments, they've put up statements, put up black boxes on social media. But then after that, what? Like, that's not enough. We've got to keep this going. We've got to build on this momentum. And there's got to be some action behind it. So I asked my guests questions like, I asked Bushra, with her platform being supporting the refugee community, and it just so happened, I already knew she was going to be my first guest. It just so happened that the Afghanistan stuff unfolded the week that I interviewed her. And so I asked her, are you okay talking about this? And she's like, yeah, let's get into it. And so, I asked her, well, how can we be more supportive to the Muslim and the refugee community? What are ways we can be allies, those of us who are not part of this community? And she gave us really tangible steps. She's like, get on the phone, call your local representatives and ask for A, B, and C, and then get online and go do this. And I'm like, and this is what we need. This is what we need, people to identify tangible things that we can do so that we can then be a part of change.
Right. And you really only see the information like that when everything kind of was unfolding through social media. I mean, the news was just showing footage and images and the fear that was circling around it, right? Social media was put into action. And I feel like you saw a lot of great allies pop up with telling me, hey, here's where you can donate. Here's where you can pay for a plane ticket. Here's where you can do this. Here's where you can do that. And I really wish that media platforms kind of took that way, right? But social media then again is led by who? The youth. And the youth is really sparking on how they move forward with a lot of this stuff. They're more initiators than they are coverers. And And I would love to transition into this a little bit. I wanted to see if you eventually on the quote are going to talk about woman education and the privilege that we have to be educated in this country. And as I've been monitoring a lot of the stuff that's been happening in Afghanistan, and I can't help but see that now in certain colleges, men and women are segregated in their learning classrooms. And we do all remember that in Afghanistan, now that this is all moving, the very fear is not only for women's rights, but for women's rights to learn and be educated. What's your opinion on that and how you feel about everything that's moving through about Afghanistan right now?
Yeah, a quote from Michelle Obama comes to mind, and I'm just going to be phrasing it because I can't repeat it verbatim, but she says something along the lines of, uh, "Our world cannot flourish when only half the population is involved and engaged," right? So that's what's happening in some of these developing countries. When you are stifling half the population, because by limiting women from schooling and other opportunities, you eliminate half your economy, and that does directly impact your economy. So these countries struggle financially when half their population isn't involved in receiving an education, going on to become productive and contributing citizens to their local economies. And so that's why I'm part of UN Women. I'm on the board of directors for UN Women in Chicago, and that is such important work for me. I signed on to that because I wanted to be a part of helping change it in a lot of other places outside of even the US. And I think I mentioned this the last time I was on, but that mission just resonates so close to home for me because my mom was in India and she grew up in that kind of place, that kind of environment where education wasn't a priority. It wasn't a priority for many women and girls out there. The priority was getting a husband, starting a family. And so Afghanistan, I imagine, is probably even heightened in a lot of senses because of the Taliban and their views on girls and women's rights. And so when you're segregating, you're also then dividing a class where you can potentially learn from one another. It takes away the opportunity for men to understand women's situations and contribute to being a part of the solution. Then there's so many factors. Even through my work in UN Women, I also learned things like how there is what they call period poverty, because when women and young girls are in school and they're on their periods, they don't get to go to school.
Right.
They're not allowed in school. They don't even have access to the necessary, things needed to go through their periods. And so they get deprived in so many ways, but it's a shame because then you're depriving your local economy. Like
Yeah.
you can't expect it to flourish when half the population isn't involved. So
Right.
yes, at the Quo, I do want to get into that, and I do plan on bringing on guests to talk about things like that. And my next guest is my fellow UN Women board member, Antonia Kofalt, and she is going to be talking about some of that, but really more about diversity, equity, inclusion, and what that means.
Right.
Those words get thrown around so much, especially as of late. And she's actually done a lot of work around this. And so I want to talk to her about what does it actually mean and what does it look like? What does doing the work look like? Because the change actually starts with us. A lot of us like just go outward, right? We're like, okay, like let's go lead the change out there. And that's needed too, but a lot of it starts inside because we have to check our unconscious biases and all of that's going on internally. And we all have it. We all have it, even if you're part of a marginalized group. You know, there's something. One thing I learned in my grad school program at Northwestern University was that we all have some sort of privilege. So as able-bodied person, I have privilege over someone who's not.
Yeah.
And so, yes, I'm a woman of color, and so there are areas that I have marginalization, but there's also areas where I don't. And so how can I then be a part of helping those that where I have the position of power and privilege?
Right. Yeah, and I think it's beautiful when you talk about the work you do with the UN. Can you kind of give us a little inside scoop on what the discussion has been about in moving forward and maybe what we can do here or what the other countries can do to try to help support this or any mindsets we have going into this? Because I think we're seeing it happen again, right? We're seeing these women have to slip into this space where there is no voice. And it's hard for me. I'm sorry, I have to take this side note. It's hard for me not to see all that. And then it's happening a little bit here in America, in Texas, when we talk about limiting women's access to health care and access to, whether how we feel about it or not, access to rights to have an abortion and all that type of stuff, right? It's hard to not see the parallels. And it's easy for us to look over there and see it as something that's so foreign and so wrong. And so, we do that, right, as Americans, but then we have it happening on our own soil in our own way. But back to what I was saying. The UN, talk to us a little about what maybe the conversation is around this and how maybe you guys see some plans can go in effect.
Yeah, so one of the things that the UN is currently doing, or UN Women, is one, we're trying to organize emergency funds to send over there, as they're scrambling, and there's been a lot of damage done in the process of the Taliban taking over, and people frantically trying to um, leave or find another situation for themselves. And so there's a crisis fund that's being organized by UN Women right now. And if you go to UN Women Chicago, our social assets, we're getting ready to organize. Um, we're actually pivoting our fundraising efforts to support the crisis in Afghanistan for our upcoming marquee event, which is the Gender Equality Awards. It's happening on Thursday, October 21st. It's virtual this year. It's usually in person, but last year and this year we've made the decision to keep it virtual. But people can tune in, and we'll reveal who we're awarding the Gender Equality Award to this year. And this award is given each year to somebody who's really doing some really great advocacy work out in the world, and is a true champion and ally to the gender equality cause. So we have a really great person that we're honoring this year, actually a couple of people. And then as part of the program, there's going to be entertainment and all that good stuff, and people will receive a little swag bag, a virtual swag bag, and there's an auction items that we're going to be giving away. And so I encourage people to register and join us for that, and those funds are going to directly go to the efforts out there. So that's one way. And the other way is encouraging our local leaders to being open and receptive to refugees that are coming here. Yeah. And you pointed out there are problems in our own soil, and so there are going to be some states that are going to be like, no, like right. there's asylum in some, and there's not in others. And it's wild that we live in a country that's so divided on so many things, and this is one of them. But I think living in Chicago, I sometimes I feel like we're in a little bubble here, because this city is open, and then you hear about what's going on in Texas, and I'm like, I can't believe this is the same country. Like, right. They
are their own country. We've learned that a long time ago. They have their own statue. They have their own national anthem and everything. But I love that work, and UN Chicago. You guys can check out how to get involved. Talk to me a little bit about, and I'll kind of give my feedback as well on how everything that's happening right now in our news, everything that's happening revolving around women, right? Women are the main topic. How does everything going on in Afghanistan impact other countries, including America, in some sort of way?
We kind of like learn from each other, or we see something and we either adapt what we're seeing, or we try to make sure that we don't fall into that pitfall or whatever it is. But so much of it, it just depends on who your leaders are, and that's why elections matter, and that's why voting matters, and all of that. I get really, I try to engage my community a lot when it comes to elections, and I don't just mean the presidential elections. In my first episode with my guest Busher, we talk about this, that it's not enough to get involved in just the presidential election. We got to be a part of our local election too. Like, we have to. 2022 is an election year here in Illinois, and so I'm going to be encouraging everyone I know to go and vote for. I mean, our governor is going to be up, our mayor, but just not just that, all levels of Congress, right? There's so many levels of government, and all of what they say and do, and the policies they enforce impact us on a daily basis, and then it impacts other states, and then that impacts other countries, because we're all trying to model off of what works and what doesn't. And so, some countries are going to look at Afghanistan and look at it as a cautionary tale, and others are going to unfortunately be like, yeah, this is what we want to also oppress this
Right.
particular community and demographic, because we believe that women shouldn't be getting equal access to education. We don't think that they should be exposed or have any part of their bodies exposed at all. They need to be completely covered from head to toe, and that sort of thing. So that's why I think that it just really matters how much we engage civically. It's
Right.
just so important.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think like you said, it's exposing who really understands the benefit of women's rights and the benefit of putting women in seats of decision making and power, and even giving them access to education. And the people who aren't. And I think that for us, we're starting to see as America, we're very much in a space of privilege, that we have the choice for religion, for everything, right? But we also are very much divided as a country in how we move about decisions. And I think that's the biggest thing, where the country where you have freedom of speech and you have freedom of opinion. And you know what I mean? We give everything to the people. And that was
Yeah.
how she was built on. But we're not now starting to see where I wish we would shift back to where what is morally right, and what is morally how it influences the generations after us, more than just what's going on right in front of us. And that's why it's hard for me. I watch the news and I see that these young women now, you're taking their education, you're taking their access to resources, and you're now kind of pushing them back down to where we tried to pull them out of. And I look around America, and it's like Americans are very much easily, that's not our business, we're not involved in it, or we're trying to help, but we don't know how to help. And so I
Yeah.
think usually they would all just be understandably, well, we know what's morally right. And so we'll just do for what we can to help. And that would make me feel better. But then again, we're much a country built on choice. And
Well, in some parts of right, there are some parts that's trying to we're taking choices away, and so we are really divided. And this is once again why it matters that we also vote for people who are diverse in representation, because look at who's making the choices in Texas.
yeah,
For women,
Yeah.
it's not women making those choices. The people they've chose and elected into that office are men, and men are then dictating what should happen to a woman's body. And I'm like, well, you got to wonder if we had a more diverse representation in our political system, and not just here in the US, but everywhere, we would be living in a society that is more inclusive and understanding of issues that impact each of us in a really unique way.
Right. Yeah. And I think the biggest thing that women bring to a table, and this is what I think is so beautiful about the recent presidential election, is looking at Congress and seeing the amount of young, diverse women that now hold seats in America. And it adds different perspectives. Men and women can now talk, they can give their perspective and men give their perspective back. That to me is the best way to make a decision. But when you take away the women who have choices and can speak up to these men who are in power, and let's say Texas, right? Texas has always been known for being predominantly male-led. And the issue about Texas is there's a lot of people that live in Texas. There's a lot of people that live in California. And there's a lot of people who are immigrants that live in Texas and California. There's a lot of people that don't have access to insurance and health care. And my fear moving forward is we don't think about how it affects others that don't look like us and don't sound like us, that don't come from where we come from. We are now causing financial burdens on them that doesn't need to be there. We're causing safety issues that does not need to be there. And we're also, for me, is they don't want people in the country, which frustrates me so much. You're also pushing them throughout the country where healthcare access is accessible. And so to me, it's very much, you need to have diversity and you need to have women in there to be able to balance how we make decisions. And I think that's the beauty of, our presidential election, regardless of who you voted for, has now become 2 and 2, right? We have men and women involved in the seats. And so I think that's something I wish we would start to, maybe we're slowly creeping that direction. But with everything that's going on in the world, I hope that influences younger people to speak up more, and women to speak up more, and men to be able to listen more, and then see the benefit of having more voices in rooms that don't sound like theirs.
Yeah, no, me too. And not to mention that they're also creating voting rights or taking away voting rights or making it really difficult for people, for especially marginalized communities, to vote. And I feel like that's a very intentional thing that's happening. I think Stacey Abrams did a great job of trying to counteract that in Georgia, right? That's why Georgia turned blue for the first time in a really long time. But this is what happens when you do make polls accessible to certain communities, because traditionally and historically, it's like polls are placed so far out from certain communities that it makes it so hard to get to. And then there's only like one that's within this mile radius. So then the lines are crazy long. And so someone is discouraged when they get there, and or they have a job they have to get to, and they're not allowing them to spend a whole day waiting in line to vote.
Yeah.
So there's so much that needs to be done around this, and having voter accessibility. And then also the whole thing with government IDs. Not everyone has access to government IDs.
Yeah.
And once again, these are marginalized communities. So when they're not able to vote, then they're not being represented at the table
Right.
where policies are being, made, and those are directly impacting them.
Yeah. Dad, through your time, because I like to refer to you a lot as my history kind of book, because you've seen so much in your lifetime. Talk to me a bit about your opinion on everything that's going on and
I think
seeing.
she's calling you old, Schaefer.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah,
No.
it's true.
Talk to us a little bit. Me and you haven't talked about it yet either. Everything that's going on in Texas, everything that's going on in Afghanistan. Talk to us a little bit about. I mean, you have seen from my grandparents with the civil rights movement, right, to the assassination of John F. Kennedy, to the assassination, right? You have seen so much happen through your lifetime. How does everything going on right now blend or compare or how can we talk about that, Dad? Like, give us your opinion on everything.
Well, I do see that there's, what has going on in our country, in our world over this past year. It has invigorated change, which was the time that I grew up in, the late 50s and early 60s, where we're actually mirroring a lot of what our country was struggling with. International support, people. I mean, we had wars then, the Vietnam War, but then we also had our domestic challenges with civil rights movements, and I witnessed the assassination of John F. Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King. I witnessed all of that. I mean, just like vividly, and the impact it has had on our world. And it's really interesting. We're approaching 9/11 and realizing how vulnerable we are as a country, and realize that something like that kind of brought us together. But then here we are again, so divided. And I want to use the word hope. Well, this past year, I've seen signs of hope with, we have a woman of color as a vice president. Okay, who would have thought that would have ever happened, right? I think we need to continue to teach. Well, we got to acknowledge. And I think a lot of what is happening is people don't want to acknowledge what is going on, disparities, inequities. I mean, they just don't want to acknowledge. And then there's fear. But then we go through that period of education, okay? And I find myself a lot now, when you refer to me, I find myself a lot of times with my friends teaching, because you don't really realize how much our kids don't know. And, they're trying to stop that in schools. Just teaching them what is really history, what is really happening, and why we are the way we are. The movie, The 13th Amendment, is one of the best documentaries that I always refer to people, because that gives you a lens on why things are and how they happen.
Right.
And we have to continue to do that. And, young women, Faith, Payal, I mean, you have to continue to, again, like I said earlier, you got to keep pushing the envelope. It's never can be complacent, because, there are always going to be that segment of our world that don't want change. Okay, I mean, we're living within a country that you have a state or states that are so differently, but look who runs those states, right? And people are comfortable with that. And so I just I see a lot of hope with everything that's going on this year. I see a lot of hope. I see the movements. I see the narratives. I see people, the onion peel peeling off people's eyes, where they're getting to see why. Okay, because that's the problem. People are in denial, or they just don't want to know.
Yeah.
And we have to continue doing that. And we have the tools. A podcast. Pyle, bringing the people. I mean, I would love to hear about how the women from Afghanistan who are coming here, how they're going to transition into this world. Who's going to support them, right? I mean, what are we doing to support that? Where there's a lot of people in our country that don't even want them here, right? But the reality is, this is America.
Yeah.
This is America, and so there's so much. But I'm going to refer back to is hope. Continue. I see a lot of things that have happened that have pushed us, closer this, from this past year. In light of everything that's going on with the pandemic, but we got to continue this kind of dialogue and narrative and continue to talk about it.
Yeah. And I feel like it's very interesting as we're coming to the side. Tomorrow's 9/11, and it's a very sensitive subject to Americans, and it's a very hard thing that happened to us as a country. But it also is a very hard thing to people who are Asian Indian immigrants, because the backlash, similar to when Pearl Harbor happened on Asian Americans, the backlash and the racism around anybody that lives distinctly near someone.
Yeah.
It's hard, and then we're also going through everything that's going on in Afghanistan now. And so for me, it's like hope is a great word for it. Sensitivity is another word for it. Understanding that everybody has a part in everything. And I just think that because tomorrow is the 20th anniversary of 9/11, we have to remember it impacts us as a country, and it impacted Americans who lived here, who were seen as enemies. And it's hard because we're going through it all again as Americans, trying to stay out of stuff, but we really need to be vocalizing and seeing what we can do here to help others.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but thank you so much, Payal, for joining us today. Again, we talked about her show, The Quo, which you can catch on YouTube and at The Quo Media, where you can check it all out. And it gives you information about where you can stream it live and catch all the shows that you missed. We appreciate you for joining us. We always love having you on the show.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me back. And I mean, you guys had the scoop when I announced The Quo, and I'm so glad to, talk to you about where it's going and where I'm currently at with it. So thank you for that opportunity, and tune in every other Monday to The Quo.
There we go. All right. We will hope to see you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, and thank you everyone else for joining us this Friday morning. A great show. We talked about from here to there, every single thing on the menu. And we are so thankful for those of you who always stop by and say hello. Again, thank you to Amazon Fire, YouTube, Facebook, Roku, Apple TV, and most importantly, our key platform on E360 TV out of Phoenix, Arizona, E360 TV. Again, The Huddle is live this upcoming Wednesday with our guest, Ashley Nicole Moss, a host for Sports Illustrated. We're excited to have her out of Brooklyn, New York. Again, this is Faith Family Focus. We're going to use our faith as a vehicle to help heal and sustain others on strengthening the family core. And of course, our slogan:
let go, let God, let go, let faith, and let go, let love.
Everyone have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you guys on Monday.